So since we're in Habakkuk, I wanted to point out the instruction on hearing God's voice. So if you've heard of Mark Verkler or Communion with God or School of the Spirit or Christian Leadership University, those are all his ministries. But his thing is hearing God's voice, and where God taught him how to hear his voice was from Habakkuk 2. And this is Habakkuk's description of while he was waiting to hear a reply from the Lord. He said, "I will stand on my guard post and station myself on the rampart, and I will keep watch to see what he will speak to me and how I may reply when I am reproved." Then the Lord answered me and said, "Record the vision and inscribe it on tablets." So from this, Mark Verkler came up with 4 keys to hearing God's voice. When I learned about hearing God's voice, oh gosh, like, I don't know, 17 years ago, no one told me this specifically. It was very vague, and so kind of had to figure out what they were talking about on my own. And then a handful of years ago, when I heard Mark Verkler's teaching on it, I was like, yes, that is a great way to present it, to help people learn who are more left-brained and it doesn't just come naturally. So the 4 keys that he put it into from Habakkuk 2 is still like quieting yourself down, picturing Jesus, tuning to flow, and writing it down. So that came out of Habakkuk's description of how he does it, and it is a good way to hear God's voice. And so on that, when we're hearing God's voice, so like I've asked God, how, when I'm listening to your voice, so often the fear that we have is that we are going to not hear from him. We're going to be hearing from some demon and think it's him and go the wrong way. And so, so actually, before I even heard about Mark Verkler, one time when I was chatting with God and hearing his voice and practicing that, and I was hearing things that sounded like him, and I was like, yeah, thinking I'm hearing from God. And then I heard something that didn't sound like him at all, and I was like, so I wanted to throw it all out there, like, I'm not hearing from God. And I heard him say, just because you're hearing other voices as well doesn't mean that you're not hearing mine. So essentially, don't throw out the baby with the bathwater. And this is where discernment of spirits comes in. So whenever we have a thought that lights upon our mind, it's typically from a spirit. We don't know if it's the Holy Spirit or an evil spirit, but it's a spirit. And so when we're hearing God's voice, if there are things that we are not sure whether it's him or not, then it's important to run it by other people and ask them, hey, does this ring true to your spirit as being something from God? And then also a way for us to determine whether it's him or not is to see, does this line up with God's character, with God's nature as revealed through the scriptures? So that is just some thoughts on hearing God's voice. I hope that's helpful. Write in the comments things that help you to hear God's voice.